People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. You feel it the moment you reach for it. The thrill, the flicker of warmth, the tiny spark that lights up your chest. It comes in many forms: a notification ping, the taste of sugar melting on your tongue, a new outfit bought just to impress, a fleeting compliment from someone who barely knows you. Each instant whispers a promise: pleasure, safety, relief, and you chase it again and again, unaware that the very thing that seduces you is weaving invisible chains around your mind. Velvet traps disguised as joy, sugar-coated chains that glitter in the dim light of your craving. It is intoxicating because it is immediate. It is seductive because it hides the emptiness underneath with a sparkling veneer of satisfaction. You think, just one more hit, one more scroll, one more bite, one more rush, and everything will feel complete. But it never does. The more you reach, the more the distance between the spark and your soul stretches. And yet, the cost of this pleasure is invisible at first. It is a slow erosion. Like waves against stone, your sense of self fragments, splintering quietly with every indulgence. You connect with others, but only on the surface, brushing against lives without ever meeting them. The relationships you have feel weightless, like paper boats on a stormy river, drifting and tearing apart before they reach shore. Each fleeting high leaves a hollow, gnawing residue of emptiness. You begin to recognize the pattern. A temporary lift, followed by a deeper fall. Your identity, once solid, now feels porous. You are stitched together from borrowed moments, borrowed feelings, borrowed joys that never truly belong to you. You feel an unnamed ache, a creeping anxiety beneath the glittering surface, and yet you push it aside because the lure is too strong and the quiet voice of self-awareness is drowned out by louder, shinier distractions. The trap is not only your own, it is everywhere. Society, subtle and cunning, tells you that indulgence is success, that pleasure is the measure of happiness. Advertisements, influencers, social media feeds, they are the mirrors that reflect a world where desire rules. Your choices feel free, yet the scripts are written long before you even realize it. Your neighbor measures life by the latest gadget. Your friend measures love by Instagram likes. And you, feeling the pulse of the same invisible drum, follow along believing this is desire when it is only echo. Ordinary people, once filled with ambition and hope, slowly dissolve into a haze of distraction, chasing shiny objects that fade as soon as they are grasped. You see it around you, and yet the thought that you too are complicit is unbearable. It is easier to blame the world than to face the chains you clutch willingly. And in this complicity lies the cruelest part. You are not the victim of pleasure alone, but of your own willingness to hand over the keys to your mind. The truth is harsh, yet it waits quietly beneath the glitter. Pleasure, pursued without consciousness, devours the self it pretends to satisfy. You are caught in its orbit, spinning faster yet never escaping. And now, if you are willing, you can begin to see the invisible threads and perhaps start to reclaim the pieces that were lost in the glow. Face the shadow, and you reclaim the light. People will do anything to avoid facing the emptiness inside them. You tell yourself that comfort is waiting, like a warm blanket on a cold night. You sink into it willingly, believing it will shield you from the harsh winds of life. A latte in your hand, the hum of your phone, the latest binge on a streaming platform. They feel safe, they feel familiar, but beneath the surface, the ice is just a whisper away. The warmth you feel is a mirage, a thin layer of illusion stretched over the jagged cracks of fear and anxiety. Each temporary pleasure is a mirror reflecting a false sense of security. You believe that scrolling endlessly will soothe the ache, that shopping will fill the hollow, that a drink will calm the storm inside, and for a moment it works. Your chest rises, your pulse slows, your mind feels lighter, but the moment passes. The ice beneath the mirrored warmth remains, sharp and unyielding. You are left with the faint echo of comfort and a deeper sense of fragility, realizing that nothing external can truly settle the turbulence within. Love, too, comes in shapes that seem real but vanish like smoke. You chase connection through flirtations, social media likes, or casual encounters, thinking these sparks are intimacy, but they are shallow rivers, reflections of desire rather than wells of genuine affection. A text that makes you smile, a compliment that lifts you for a fleeting moment. They are addictive, seductive, yet hollow. Real love demands presence, vulnerability, and the courage to sit with someone's authentic self. But indulgent desire asks only for attention and performance. You find yourself entwined with people not for who they are, but for how they make you feel. The emotional currency is momentary validation, not trust or understanding. You may lie awake at night, thinking you are fulfilled, but the truth whispers, these connections are costumes, masks, hiding emptiness behind fleeting smiles. You crave warmth, yet what you embrace evaporates, leaving the cold to seep deeper into your bones. And still, the trap is nearly invisible. You move through the world believing your choices are free, when in fact, they are guided by a quiet, insidious pattern. The more you chase comfort and counterfeit love, the more you are caught in a cage of your own making. Pleasure addiction binds your psyche without chains you can see. Ordinary moments, the quick scroll, the effortless indulgence, the habit of seeking attention become bars in a prison whose doors you willingly open and close. You forget that each distraction is a lock, each mirage a wall, and the world's applause is only the soundtrack of your confinement. Society applauds indulgence, praises instant gratification, and calls it success. You conform, unseeing, complicit in your own captivity, and so the cycle repeats. A spark of joy, a fleeting connection, and then the cold return of the void, pulling you further into the illusion. Understanding this is the first step. The mirrors of comfort may shimmer, the false loves may tempt, but none can fill the gaps within. You begin to recognize the cage, the illusory walls, and the quiet voice of self that has been waiting beneath the noise. Awareness flickers like a candle in a dark room, fragile but persistent. This is the moment when choice becomes possible, when you can stop mistaking shadow for substance, when the mirage begins to dissolve. See the illusion, and you reclaim your soul. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. You grew up learning to survive before you learned to feel. The longing for approval, for love, for simple acknowledgement, was quietly denied in moments too subtle to name. A parent's distracted gaze, a sibling's harsh word, the absence of warmth that should have been automatic. All these left faint scars on the corners of your soul. And the mind, clever and relentless, devised its own solution: pleasure. It became the balm, the substitute, the invisible salve that promised relief from the ache you could not speak. Late night scrolling, impulsive buying, indulgent food, meaningless encounters, each is a response to wounds that never healed. You do not chase pleasure because you are weak, but because the unmet need of your inner child whispers so loudly it cannot be ignored. And every time you indulge, the echo of those early absences hums beneath the surface, unnoticed, shaping choices you believe are free. You reach for escape, yet it is trauma that pulls the strings, guiding your hand toward fleeting highs, while the shadows of your past watch silently from the corners of your mind. The wounds speak in subtle tongues. You may not recognize them, yet they dictate your steps. They manifest as cravings, compulsions, the need to be seen or admired, the insistence on temporary escapes. The scars whisper in velvet tones, soft enough to lull you into comfort, but persistent enough to bend your decisions. You may believe a new relationship will soothe you, or that a purchase will fill the emptiness, but these are only projections, your unmet needs, wearing the mask of desire. The pain is present in your laughter that is too loud, in your work that is never enough, in your pleasures that leave you empty. Unprocessed grief and fear do not vanish, they hide behind the glitter of indulgence, subtly steering your life while you remain unaware. Like ghosts in the machinery of your mind, they pull you toward behaviors that replicate the original wounds, over and over, demanding recognition through the language of craving. And within you, a war rages. Shadow impulses, the desire to numb, to escape, to fill the void, clash with the small conscious voice that knows there must be another way. Every choice feels like a battlefield. You want relief, yet you fear surrender. You seek comfort, yet you crave authenticity. The mind negotiates, justifies, rationalizes, but the body remembers what words cannot capture. You feel it in your chest, a tension between knowing and wanting, between past and present, between the shadow self that lures and the conscious self that resists. This battle is intimate, unseen by the world, yet it shapes every action, every impulse, every fleeting happiness. And as long as it remains unacknowledged, you will chase illusions, believing them to be freedom, when in truth, they are only echoes of the wounds you have yet to meet. To face your shadow is to reclaim your soul's freedom. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. The moment comes quietly, almost imperceptibly, like a mirror cracking silently in a dark room. One day, the thrill that once lifted you feels hollow. The shopping sprees, the endless scrolling, the fleeting pleasures, all of it fails to ignite even a spark. You reach for the temporary highs, but your chest feels heavier, your pulse slower, your joy empty. The illusion shatters, because the soul is not fooled forever. What once disguised itself as comfort now reveals itself as absence. You feel the emptiness, like a room stripped bare, walls echoing back only your own breathing. You realize that all the indulgence, all the chasing, has been a mask over a void that only deeper understanding can touch. The world continues to glitter, everyone else laughing or scrolling as if nothing has changed, and yet inside you a quiet storm rages, a recognition that pleasure cannot heal what is broken within. And in that storm, your identity begins to fragment. The boundaries that once separated who you are from what you do blur and dissolve. Pleasure addiction has hollowed out the self in subtle increments. Your wants are borrowed from society, your desires shaped by impulse, your choices dictated by unacknowledged needs. You look in the mirror and see someone familiar yet alien. You recognize patterns in your laughter, your gestures, your interactions, and realize they are all extensions of craving, not expressions of your authentic self. The self that once felt solid now splinters into pieces, scattered across fleeting indulgences. Friendships feel shallow, ambitions feel hollow, and even your solitude feels empty. The walls you built to protect your identity now tremble, as if the bricks themselves were illusions you once called home. You grasp for a sense of coherence, but it slips like smoke through your fingers, leaving only fragments that ache to be reassembled. Despair settles in quietly, wrapped in guilt, shame, and fear. You blame yourself for indulgence that has never satisfied you. You fear that the pieces lost can never be recovered, that the path back to authenticity is blocked by years of distraction and avoidance. Nights stretch long and silent, thoughts circling like vultures over memories of indulgences that betrayed you. Each regret is a sharp stone pressed into the chest, each unfulfilled desire a reminder of your own vulnerability. Yet in this darkness, there is a truth you can barely hear. The collapse is not the end. The despair is not condemnation, but revelation. Only by facing this emptiness, naming it and sitting with it, can the pieces begin to be gathered. The storm is fierce, but it is also cleansing, stripping away the false and leaving the raw material of self exposed, ready to be reclaimed. Through the fragments, I will find myself whole. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. You once believed that pleasure was love, that the rush of indulgence, the glow of attention, the fleeting sparks of desire were proof of connection, proof of care. But pleasure is fleeting. It rises like smoke, curling around your senses, intoxicating, seductive, but it never stays. A late night call, a spontaneous gift, the thrill of a new romance. They feel real, but they are temporary illusions. True love does not burn out in hours. It does not vanish when attention shifts. True joy endures, deep in the body and soul, quietly persistent, steady in a way that pleasure never can be. Recognizing this distinction is the first act of clarity. The moments you once mistook for love were often just your mind seeking relief, your shadow projecting desire onto the world. You chase sparks and find nothing but shadows. Yet the realization slowly begins to settle. Pleasure was never the sanctuary you imagined. And these illusions are shadows, not companions. Each craving, each indulgence, each moment of seeking is a projection of your own unprocessed needs. You may have clung to someone's approval, a partner's attention, or even the applause of strangers, thinking it was love. But what you were holding was a reflection of yourself, a shadow cast in another's image. The warmth you felt was temporary, the connection superficial. You see now that the patterns of indulgence were guiding you, shaping your behavior, and masking the parts of yourself that demanded recognition. The desires you mistook for love were often the voice of your own unacknowledged wounds, whispering through the lens of attraction and thrill. Recognizing this is not shame, it is insight. It is the first step in untangling the self from the illusions that have guided your choices for so long. Freedom begins not with action, but with seeing. You do not need to rush into change, because the awareness itself is powerful. To recognize that pleasure is not love is to open a window into your own consciousness. Suddenly the chains loosen. You feel the weight of your habits, your cravings, your illusions, but now they are visible, tangible, not invisible masters. The first awakening is subtle, a quiet knowing, a breath of clarity amid the storm. And in that knowing, the possibility of choice emerges. You can stop chasing shadows. You can let go of what never belonged to you. You can step toward the light of your own authentic joy, slowly, deliberately, and without fear. I see the shadows, and I claim my heart. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. You feel it first as a shiver, a hesitation in your chest, a quiet resistance to looking where it hurts. The shadow waits in the corners of your mind, suppressed desires, unacknowledged fears, unhealed wounds, all the parts of yourself you have denied or disguised. It is terrifying because it is unknown, yet intimately familiar. Every craving you chase, every indulgence you cling to, has been guided by this unseen presence. To meet it is to face yourself without masks, without distraction. You feel the pull between avoidance and curiosity, the instinct to run clashing with the whisper that freedom lies on the other side of fear. The shadow is not evil. It is necessary. It is the collection of what you have rejected, the pieces of yourself you refuse to see. And in that confrontation there is power. In the moment you dare to look, even briefly, the first threads of conscious choice begin to form, and the illusion of helplessness starts to fade. Dialogue with this pain becomes your lifeline. You begin to journal, to write down the thoughts that rise like shadows in the quiet of the night. You imagine conversations with the parts of yourself you have ignored, your younger self crying in silence, the desires buried under years of avoidance, the fear that shaped every impulsive act. Visualization becomes a bridge. You picture the shadow as a companion rather than an enemy, sitting across from you, reflecting truths you have never spoken aloud. You confront the impulses that once drove you blindly and listen without judgment. In these moments, insight emerges. The shadow is a teacher, a guide, a mirror. Each word written, each imagined dialogue, each quiet acknowledgement of need or fear transforms what once controlled you into knowledge, and knowledge becomes power. You realize that awareness itself is an act of liberation. And then comes the shift, choosing conscious desire over unconscious compulsion. You feel the difference as subtle at first, a pause before action, a breath before indulgence, a moment to ask whether this serves the self you truly want to become. Pleasure no longer rules by default. It becomes a tool, not a tyrant. You pursue what nourishes rather than what distracts. Small decisions, what you eat, how you spend your time, the way you interact with others, become affirmations of agency. Every intentional choice strengthens your connection to yourself, to your values, to the life that has been waiting for your presence. The shadows still exist, but they no longer dictate your path. They inform it. You meet them with courage, converse with them with honesty, and act with intention. The once invisible chains of craving are replaced by a rhythm of conscious living, each step echoing with clarity, strength, and freedom. I meet my shadow, and I choose my light. Even a happy life cannot be without a measure of darkness, and the word happy would lose its meaning if it were not balanced by sadness. Imagine a room once shadowed and cold, now touched by sunlight spilling through the windows. The shadows of craving and impulsive desire retreat quietly, revealing corners of yourself you thought were lost. You walk through this light and feel something you may not have known in years. Calm, steady, unshaken by the fleeting urges that once ruled you. Pleasure still exists, but it no longer commands the room. You sip your morning coffee, feel the warmth in your hands, hear the world's quiet hum, and it is enough. The chaos that once clung to your soul like a storm has begun to dissipate, leaving a sky within you vast and open. You sense the possibility of inner peace, not as a dream, but as something tangible, rooted in the awareness and choices you now make. The mind, once a battlefield, feels like a sanctuary. True joy is no longer the spike of indulgence, the instant rush of dopamine. It is the gentle pulse of life lived intentionally, a friendship nurtured over years, the satisfaction of completing work that matters, the quiet pleasure of a walk in the park, the taste of a meal shared with someone present in the moment. Instant gratification still tempts, yet it no longer dominates. You feel the difference in your body, in your rhythm, in the quality of your thoughts. Joy that is earned, acknowledged, and savored lingers, strengthening the self rather than fragmenting it. Each mindful act, each conscious choice, reinforces a life of authenticity. You learn that pleasure is not the enemy. It is only dangerous when pursued blindly, without recognition of the self that stands behind it. The path forward is yours to discover. No grand gestures are required, only steady steps. Moments of reflection, honest acknowledgement of your shadow, small acts of conscious living, journaling, meditation, listening to your inner voice, choosing presence over distraction. These are the doors to individuation. Life becomes a journey of self-discovery rather than a chase for fleeting highs. And as you walk it, You recognize that liberation is not in avoiding desire, but in choosing which desires serve your wholeness, which habits honor your values, and which pleasures bring light rather than shadows. The horizon stretches wide, and you step toward it with quiet certainty, carrying both awareness and joy. I choose peace, and I live in light.